As William's wealth grew, so did his demands for service. For the food he paid a lot of money for the people around him, but most of all he demanded the girls he slept with regularly, without even thinking about the morality of his actions in his 30s. He had already been married twice, and both of his ex-wives were, to put it mildly, displeased with his constant cheating. William sincerely believed that since he worked hard and fruitfully, he should have rested accordingly, namely, to enjoy the full program, often not caring about the comfort and feelings of others, in particular, his wives and girlfriends. Catherine became his third legal wife, with whom he somehow entered into an official marriage. Of course, he himself, this official status was indifferent, but women have always insisted on it, well aware that in the event of divorce, they can grab a significant financial share. William was partial to female beauty. Therefore, in a burst of passion and some blind admiration for women, he usually quickly agreed to put a stamp in the passport, although after a week he realized that soon in his main document will appear another record. So it happened, and this time he was now married to Catherine. About 2 months had passed since the wedding, but William was already more excited about his newly built and renovated cottage than his wife. The cottage was a symbol of his success. A vast estate with meticulously manicured gardens, a swimming pool, and an extravagant interior that reflected his taste for luxury. Every room in the house was decorated with the finest materials, marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and imported furniture. William was proud of his new home and often invited guests to brag about his achievements. Catherine, on the other hand, seemed to fade into the background, her presence overshadowed by the grandeur of the estate. Most of the guests at the last meeting had gone home in cabs or had been picked up by their own drivers, but a few had chosen to spend the night in William's new bedrooms, leaving him alone by 2 in the morning. The man rarely reached the condition necessary to be left last, but those around him were no longer able to have heartfelt conversations with him or continue their active entertainment. Appreciating the extent of the destruction at the party, he thought it could have been worse. Scattered glasses, half-empty bottles, and abandoned shoes were only part of the price he'd paid for his lifestyle. The last awake person in the house, besides himself, was his own mother-in-law. Having just met her, he immediately recognized her as a very intriguing person. The woman seemed far from stupid and very calculating. She always dressed expensively and behaved rather arrogantly. Something about her attracted him. Her name was Eleanor, and she insisted on being addressed by her first name, believing that adding a formal title would make her look older. She was only a little over 40, which surprised William. He thought about it as he addressed her, Miss Eleanor. The woman wasn't the least bit startled by his voice, as if she knew her son-in-law was approaching from behind, and perhaps even expected him at this very spot. "No, Will, on the contrary, I am enjoying your new home. I'd like to believe I've been to many rich and luxurious places, but unlike them, your home has a soul. That's why it's at the top of my list." William raised an eyebrow, intrigued by her comment. "That's good to hear. It's been a hard day today." "Are you tired?" he asked, trying to figure out her intentions. "Not really. I was just looking for company to get on with the night," Eleanor replied, meeting his eyes with a hint of mischief in them. "Why?" asked William, slightly amused by her directness. "I just saw a pool table in the basement and thought I'd been wanting someone to teach me how to play for a long time. Well, since everyone's gone and we're not tired, I'm ready to be your apprentice." Her smile was playful, but William sensed the challenge behind her words. "Well, let's not waste any time. Let's go," William said, his curiosity piqued. Eleanor took the initiative and picked up a martini glass from the table and headed for the stairs, the clicking of her heels reflecting off the walls. William followed her, noticing the sway of her hips. The unusual couple sat across from each other, separated only by a wide pool table. Each took a sip of their drink before William continued. "Do you know the rules?" "Yes, so let's get started. Let's dispense with the theory and get right to the practice." Eleanor's voice was calm, but there was a tinge of something more in it, something that made William's pulse quicken. William couldn't escape the thought that Eleanor's every phrase had a double meaning. When she leaned over the table, there was something tantalizing in her movements. He admired her, realizing how ineptly she had placed her hand on the table. He moved closer, giving her wrist a more proper and confident position. Eleanor smelled of something very pleasant, and William wanted to inhale the scent of her skin for as long as possible. However, he reluctantly pulled away, taking a couple steps back. Suddenly, she straightened up and asked, "By the way, what are we playing for?" "Do we need a prize?" asked William, his voice betraying his interest in what was going on. "Of course we do. Only kids in kindergarten play without bets," What suggestions do you have? Eleanor's eyes sparkled as she spoke, and her smile grew wider. Let's play for desire, she said, and there was an undertone in her voice. William agreed, intrigued. He watched Eleanor's demeanor change. Her movements became confident. She leaned over the table and broke the pyramid with a quick movement, picking up one of the balls in her pocket. 1, she counted off, then leaned over again and sent another ball into the hole. 2. I want to talk about you and Catherine, she said, walking over to the other side of the table. Without thinking long, she sent another ball into the hole. 3. Or rather, about your relationship with her and parallel relationships with other women. Without moving from her seat, she took aim and sent another ball to the opposite side of the table. 4. I know you're going to cheat on her. It's only a matter of time. William stood, stunned by her directness. Another ball lay in the hole, and he felt a mixture of emotions, shock, intrigue, and a strange sense of arousal. Of course, she'll find out sooner or later. But I want to get some benefit from keeping this information to myself, Eleanor added, keeping her eyes on him. She deftly sent another ball into the hole and turned to look at William, who obediently walked over. She put the cue aside, positioning herself closer to the edge of the table, and smirked, hesitant to make a move. Eleanor had outplayed him in every way, both in billiards and psychologically. She pulled William to her, showing that she was not only skilled with the cue, but also with people, especially men and their emotions. The tension in the room was palpable. William hadn't experienced such a connection in a long time. He could feel the adrenaline rushing through his veins as she leaned closer, her lips almost touching his ear as she whispered, "Are you ready to play for real now?" As he saw the last of the guests off, William wondered if he had dreamed at all. He couldn't find his mother-in-law anywhere. Memories of her touch and gaze lingered in his mind. As soon as the house was empty, he rushed to the basement with his heart pounding. He saw evidence of the last night's play, a bodice sticking out of one of the corner holes of the pool table. William lifted the bodice and a smile played on his lips. He couldn't deny the excitement he felt. It was reckless, dangerous, and utterly intoxicating. This night had left him with more questions than answers, and he found himself wanting more. Eleanor was a mystery he couldn't wait to solve. The game they were playing was far from over, and William realized he was already in too deep. The next days passed like a blur. Catherine was oblivious, minding her own business, and William became more and more absorbed in thoughts of Eleanor. He replayed their meeting again and again in his memory, and each detail was more vivid than the previous one. The way she had confidently pulled herself together, the look in her eyes when she had made her intentions clear, all of it was unlike anything he had ever experienced. One evening, as he sat in his office, William received a text message. It was from an unfamiliar number, but he knew immediately who it was. Same place, same stakes, the message read. His pulse quickened, and without hesitation he replied, "I will." The game had just begun, and William was ready to see how far he could go.